We are back with another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast. And as always, the name kind of explains the whole premise. We're giving you advice based on everything we did wrong the first time. And I also can't really speak on behalf of the guests, but it's at least everything I did wrong the first time. Each week I bring on founders, investors, product experts, technology futurists, sales gurus, and just about anyone that's very smart in the world of startups and can help us work out how to build a great business. And then together, we answer your questions about what's going on in your life and in your businesses. We either find them on Reddit or people send them in, but really the thing that happens every week is that the guests have never seen these questions, so they're hearing them live for the very first time just like you. So if you do have questions or you're trying to put out fires in your business, send us an email and we'll workshop it on the show with another great guest. So send those through to podcast@joelditrapani.com. I know that is a difficult email and I should have probably chosen something more simple, but I didn't, so I'm just going to put that in the show notes and you can copy and paste it later on to send me an email. I'm your host, Joel Ditrapani, and I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Vigo, which is an edtech scale-up. We've grown it through Australia, we've grown it through the UK, and now we're focused on the US. On top of that, I'm an advisor and a coach in the product space where I help startups and businesses learn how to run great product teams, because a great product team is the secret to building a great product, and something I absolutely got wrong a lot for years in my startup. And today, I'm super excited to be joined by Gordon Daugherty, the co-founder and chairman of Capital Factory, a co-working space, early stage venture fund, and tech accelerator that is also known as the center of gravity for entrepreneurs in Texas. Gordon is also known as the startup whisperer. So that's when I first got introduced to Gordon by Jason Cohen, one of our other guests. He said, you've got to get Gordon on. He is the startup whisperer. So he's got a lot to share because Gordon is also a seasoned business executive, startup advisor, investor, and the best-selling author of Startup Success, a book dedicated to helping entrepreneurs fund the early stages of their venture. Gordon has also invested in over 350 companies, so he really knows what he's talking about in this space. While Gordon's career is incredibly decorated and wide varied, the through line of his work is giving. Whether it's investments, content, or advising, Gordon is dedicated to helping founders on their own journey. So Gordon is an absolute expert at early stage fundraising. So we'll jump into it. Welcome, Gordon. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Joel.
Look, before we get into our challenges today, can you tell us a little bit more about your book?
Well, my book was inspired mostly because I'd published a bunch of articles on fundraising, funding the early stages of a startup's venture. And I had a founder that sat down with me for office hours, and she had a big grin on her face. And I said, hey, what's up, Pamela? And she said, I binge read your whole blog this weekend. I said, wow, all those articles. She said, yeah, it was amazing. I can't wait to talk to you. But I realized I read some of the articles out of order. I realized later it would have been better to read certain articles before other ones. Have you ever thought about publishing a book? So that was the dawn of the idea. Of course, you can't just copy and paste a bunch of blog articles and call it a book. So it was hundreds of hours of effort. But that was the idea. Give kind of a handbook, somewhat of a step-by-step guide for founders wanting to figure out how to fundraise, because most founders have never had to fundraise for anything.
I feel like that is an incredible story of MVP through to a meaningful product. You know, like you were investing, you kept getting the same questions over and over and over from the 350 times you've done it, that you've invested in these companies. You've started to write the articles as you went. And then I guess, had you thought about writing a book before, or was that like, you know, the first moment where you'd really considered it?
You know, it's funny. I'm in my late 50s now, but when I was about 21 or 22 years old, one of my managers at IBM suggested I write down my long-term personal and professional goals, right? I'm like, oh, that's an interesting idea. And I had about 5 long-term goals, and one of them randomly was write a book. I don't know why I wrote it down. Like, honestly, at 21 or 22 years old, I said, write a book. And so, yeah, when Pamela said that, I realized, holy crap, that was on my long-term goal list forever. You know, here's my opportunity. Yeah.
I love it. Well, it's a great book. And if you're wanting to fundraise, it's a particularly challenging time right now. So you might need all the help you can get. So check out Gordon's book. We'll put all the links in the show notes as well. But let's jump into some of the advice that Gordon covers in that book. So I've got a couple of fundraising questions here today. So we'll jump into the first challenge. This challenge is called, I have an idea for a startup. How do I find an investor? I'm kind of new to this and I don't know what to ask. So I'll ask you lovely people. Once one comes up with the plan and locates the people to help orchestrate said plan, how do I find an investor? I've tried searching myself and everything seems a little scammy. So legit help would be very appreciated. From Mini Trucker 82.
It's a great question. I think many founders make the mistake of thinking that their first investor after they have the idea is some venture capital fund, a VC. But actually, that's very rarely the case. The very first rounds of funding are often friends and family. Now, this particular founder, that might be obvious to them. So if they have a rich aunt or uncle or parent or grandparent, they might have already, approached that. So let's move a little bit past that. This is where, at least in the US, angel investors would likely be the first investor. But before the startup has built a product, before they have put it out in the market and achieved some paying customers, it's actually even hard to get angel investors to invest. That might not seem obvious, but angels are actually usually successful professional business people. They just happen to make money because of previous ventures that they had run. So one of the most important pieces of advice I would have for this founder or other founders that are in that stage of they haven't built the product and don't have revenue yet is to find what I call a hyper intersected angel. It's not just any rich person. It's somebody that has money, invests in startups, but they have intersections with your business plan. Their prior successes, the things they've done, the things they've accomplished, intersect with the founder's business plan. It means they have expertise in your industry or your business model or your type of product or technology. You'll have a much higher success rate raising from an intersected or hyper intersected angel than just some random angel. And I can speak more to that, but that would be my first piece of advice to this founder.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, to be honest, the case for the life of your startup, whether it's your first money or the money like deeper and deeper into the rounds you do, is that find investors that are, I like the term hyper intersected, like that have crossover and expertise in what you're doing. And not only because they can help, but they're more likely to invest because they understand you. Like if you've got an education company and you're trying to pitch to fintech people, they won't understand the problem. So they might not see the value or the potential in your business. So I love that idea. But I guess I might disagree, or maybe we've just skipped past this with you, Gordon. So I actually think, the harsh reality for this founder is that they can't raise. Like if you just have an idea and you might have some people that like you are interested in kind of coming on board with you, that's way too early to raise. Like I don't think that it's more so like there are exceptions to this rule, but in general, I just don't think you can raise. You're way too early to raise because you haven't done anything yet. And ideas are effectively worthless. Like it's great that you have an idea for you, but until you execute on it, no one really cares. And I know that's really brutal, but like, because I made the same mistake, in the early days of Vigo, we had this idea. We were even hesitant to tell people about the idea because it was so valuable. And we couldn't raise for years, like because we were trying the wrong tactics. We should have spent all of our early effort building the platform, building the product, building traction before you can get anything. I'd say there are only like several exceptions. You can raise off an idea if you've had a lot of success historically. Like if you've done massive startups in the past and you're a proven founder, you can probably raise then. Second is like maybe you're exceptionally like technical. Like this is new IP. Like you've actually discovered something that isn't a business model innovation. It's like some kind of technical innovation. Like, you've just discovered the next OpenAI, and you can prove that. Or you're surrounded by really rich people in your life that don't know how to invest, and they invest like really early, which is also probably a bad idea, to be honest, but because you don't know what to do yet. So I don't know, like what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I will agree with you on this, and that is because we think about the pre-launch phase of a startup before they've launched the product and before they have customers. That's actually not just one phase. You actually can break that further into about 3 or 4 different phases. And if this founder with their question is implying, and maybe their words were very specific, all they have is an idea. You know, I mean, they have a napkin with a bunch of chicken scratch on it. Like, if that's where they are, forget it. No angel investor is going to invest. That would be a great exception. It's possible that their Aunt Sally would give the founder a little bit of money, but Aunt Sally's giving the money because she loves this founder very much, not because she wants to make a 10x return on her investment. So yeah, in that early idea development stage, it would be some combination of bootstrapping by the founder themselves. They keep their day jobs so that they can pay the bills, and they work on this on nights and weekends. And maybe Aunt Sally's going to give them a little bit of money. That'll change a little later once they've got a crappy, prototypey, ugly, buggy something that kind of works. Maybe there would be some angel investors, but then, and as they proceed a little closer to actually having a product, that would open up what we would call an angel round of funding. So I will agree with you, if we break that pre-launch into about 3 different phases, you have to think of it very differently.
What would those 3 phases be?
I'd call it like early idea development. Then I would call the next one something that resembles, building the minimum viable product. So something that, there are lines of code, or there's solder and soldering irons being put to work, and maybe something we can touch or kind of see. And then the next one would be right before launching the product, because right before launching the product, usually we've had some beta testers, or we've got some indication that the market wants what we're building. So I would kind of break it like that: idea development, MVP development, and then just pre-launch is probably how I would break that up.
And what if we just exclusively talk about SaaS? What is the stage where you think it would make sense to go out looking for those hyper intersectional angels?
Hyper intersected angels. It's almost never too early to identify your next stage of investors. You might have heard the phrase, a founder's always raising money. That doesn't mean they're always asking for checks to be written. It means they're always thinking about the next round of funding. They're always building relationships with whoever might fund their startup next. The reason this is important is we want to know what would get the next stage of investor excited about investing in our company, so that we can navigate ourselves to that particular point, that type of accomplishments, that type of traction, those types of outcomes. So that might also be the case with angels for a startup that is in that first or second phase that we talked about pre-launch, meaning we're too early for angels. Finding some angels that have intersections and asking them, telling them what you're working on, maybe getting some advice from them, that'd be interesting and helpful. And then kind of asking, what would get you excited about investing in my startup? Like, what would you need to see for this to be an exciting investment for you? And whatever those angels that are intersected say would give an indication for what needs to be accomplished to be ready to go ask them for money. That, to me, would be a best practice. Finding these hyper intersected angels is not easy, and it's because they're not VCs. They don't have websites. VCs have websites, and those websites say what they invest in. Angels are just random people like you and me that happen to have enough money to invest. I don't have a website that says what I like to invest in, but you know what I have? I have a LinkedIn profile. There are people that know me, and they know my background, and they would tell you that all of my career in tech was in software and hardware companies that sold to large enterprise. So you can imagine the investments that I'd be interested in making are into startups that are selling software and hardware to very large enterprises, not startups building mobile apps for consumers. So this is kind of one of the ways of finding those hyper intersected angels early.
I guess, like, once you've identified them, is there an approach you would recommend taking to reaching out? Because I'm always a huge supporter of cold outreach, but like when you are new to this space and you don't necessarily have a big community, what would be the first kind of like steps you would take to meet them?
Yeah, well, one obvious approach would be, where are they hanging out? If they're investors, early investors, they're probably also advisors. It is true that many times angel investors that invest early also like to engage and help, the startups. So this advisor-investor combination happens a lot. So if that's the case, you could imagine that those investors are hanging out at co-working spaces and incubators and accelerators. And so this is why so many founders have found that joining a co-working space or incubator or accelerator isn't just for the program and the events and things. It's the community that surrounds them. At Capital Factory, we have lots of investors that are coming to our events. They're mentoring our co-working members. They're mentoring our portfolio companies. And so just being in those places where those individuals are, those angels are, it will increase the surface area. It will increase the odds of finding one and getting to know them. And then the rest is just basic networking. You might be working on a mobile app for consumers, which is not my specialty, but I might help you with something while you're at Capital Factory. And then when you ask me, hey, Gordon, do you know any angels that do like to invest in mobile apps for consumers? Oh yeah, I know about 20 of them. Let me introduce you to a few. So that would just be, just basic networking and navigating.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, I think there's a lot of good context here. So I'm going to try and wrap this one up into a final judgment here. So Mini Trucker 82. First up, it is incredible that you're doing a startup. Like the fact that you've got an idea and you're actually going to go and do that. Like I love that. And the fact that, you're reaching out to a community for help. Like you've taken more steps down this path than most people ever do. So you're already like on a journey that is exciting and will teach you a lot. But you likely are too early to go for external investment. So the first investor you need to find is just you and your team, and the investment is time. So the more and more and more that you work away at this, and the further and further you get down this path through these different phases that Gordon's mentioning, as you get through your early idea stage into kind of like building your MVP and then kind of testing the market, the further you get, the more likely it is that you'll find investors that want to come on the journey with you. And so I guess, as Gordon mentions, start searching now. Start building your right community now. Go out and find out who these hyper intersection angels. I don't know why I can't get that word right, Gordon. But find the investors that have overlap that are interested in what you're interested in. Because if they're interested in what you're interested in, they're probably interested in you. So start bringing those people, surrounding yourself with them, and learning from them. And then eventually you'll find the angels that want to invest in your idea when your business is at a point in time where it's had enough traction and enough proof points of validation that people can invest. And the way you can start meeting those people is just cold outreach on LinkedIn. As always, that's how you search and you find you can reach out. That's useful. And then go to where they are, whether it's the co-working spaces or the meetups. And not all co-working spaces and all meetups are good, but you just have to go through more and more and more until you find the right people. Or I always just feel like rich investors are at golf clubs, so maybe just try golf clubs too and see if they're hanging around there. And try and just build that community, because that community will start to grow itself as well. Is there anything missing there, Gordon?
No, I like all of that. Only one addition I might make is if your customers are doctors' offices, if your customers are restaurants, meaning your technology selling to them, as you're reaching out to them to help build the requirements, what we call customer discovery, you might find some restaurant owners and some doctors that are potentially your first investors. So that would be a different category, not a professional angel, but maybe it's your future customer that could be your investor. Good advice.
That is a good idea. I love that one. All right. Well, Mini Trucker 82, you've been advised. Then we'll move on to the next question. All right. This challenge is called Angel versus VC versus crowdfunding versus accelerator. The hard work of inventing a product and creating a prototype is done. Excitingly, people are loving the prototype and the overall concept, and a lot are waiting eagerly for it to be available. From here, I have bold plans to put this into the hands of millions of people before competitions start catching up. But this is where I'm a bit stuck in a weird spot. I recognize that although once launched, we create a new profitable product category, the prototype still needs a little more work and finishing touches before it can be fully functional and launched for revenue generation. The process costs money no longer available. I'm in other words stuck in an awkward stage. It's just me, the inventor, and some contracted coders right now. I don't need help with much besides funds, although an experienced advisor could be nice. So crowdfunding sounded ideal, but just opening the Angel List platform seems to suggest that I need a legal team and a few more employees to navigate the process and run a successful campaign. So from here, I'm not sure if I'd have better luck seeking an accelerator program, angel investor, or going for VC directly. Any advice? From Fanatical Lunatic.
Well, let's pretty quickly remove the VC from the equation, because this particular founder sounds not ready for VCs. Maybe they will later, so put that on the side. The others are potentially all possible, We talked about angel investors, a little bit. And so, yes, if they've built something that can be touched and demonstrated, maybe there's some angels there that could be possible. An accelerator program could be possible as well. A first-time founder that's never done this before doesn't just need funding. Funding is not the only thing a first-time founder needs. They need a lot of help. And so for some founders that are willing to give up interesting amounts of equity, 5%, 8%, 10%, and get a little funding from an accelerator, yes, they're going to put some cash in the bank, but they also hopefully will get some good mentorship and some good framework and processes. Increasingly now there are accelerators that are focused on particular industries or technology areas or product categories. And so this founder, if I don't know what they're building, maybe they said and I missed it, but there might be an accelerator for those types of startups that could be interesting. The crowdfunding idea, maybe not. I think I see a lot of founders fail miserably and just assume that all they have to do is just kind of spend an hour or two putting their pitch deck and some other stuff up on some portal, and the investors are just going to come. And that is not going to happen. It's a lot of effort. And there are certain products that are better suited, that'll have better odds of success on a crowdfunding campaign than others. And so, you can help me decide where we want to kind of go deeper into this. But for this founder, it's possibly the answer is an and, not an or. It's possibly some combination of angels and accelerator and crowdfunding, angels and crowdfunding. Maybe not all at the same time, but probably until they get a product launched, it's going to be some combination of a couple of those.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Like it's not, it is always very situationally dependent on the startup. What I would say is, as you mentioned, VC it's probably way too early for VC. Again, unless you are a very proven founder, and if you're a proven founder, you probably don't have these questions. So we'll just take that off the table. Crowdfunding, I would also just take off the table completely. And the reason being is that crowdfunding, there are two reasons that crowdfunding works. One is that you have the perfect product for crowdfunding. So crowdfunding only really works for like an exciting, novel consumer experience. So like things that are fun and people might want to have. And I think it works better for hardware or like some kind of physical product than anything else. And it sounds like you've just got coders, so like it's probably not that. So I'll just take that off. The second reason that crowdfunding probably won't work is that you need to be like a marketing genius to make crowdfunding work. When you're raising from angels, you only need to convince a small group of people to tip money in. When you're convinced, and people whose job it is to tip money into stuff. So like when you're convincing crowdfunding, you're trying to sell a product that doesn't exist yet to people that don't have money to invest in this space. So like you need to be a marketing expert. So I would just steer clear of that personally myself. So then it comes down to angels and accelerators. And there was just one flag in this question for me. This founder said something along the lines of like, all I need is money, I don't need anything else, but like maybe an advisor would be okay. It's like, wrong. Like the fact that you have these kind of questions mean that you actually need to surround yourself with incredible people now and forever. So, it's awesome that you've made this progress and you've got a prototype and people want it. Like that is a stage that most people don't get to. But like your product's still wrong. Like you still need a lot of iterations. Like when you get out into the market, it's going to change and you're going to pivot and it's going to go through so many iterations. So like I think you need way more help than you realize. And it sounds like you're not very coachable. And I think you need to get more coachable. Like you need to be willing to take on more advice in this space. So I always recommend so highly doing an accelerator. But I want to put some bounds on what I mean by that. So I think an accelerator is definitely the reason that Vigo exists. So we actually did multiple accelerators. Some were just like mini accelerators, pre-accelerators, actual accelerators. But like that process of surrounding yourself with incredible people, like that's what helped us get from 0 to 1. Like that process helped us really succeed as a business, and we wouldn't be alive without it, to be honest. So accelerators can be so valuable. But there are ranges of accelerators out there. There are good ones, there are shit ones, and there are rip-offs that try and rip you off. Like, generally, my rule of thumb is if an accelerator is charging you money, you need to think twice about that. Like I've not come across many or any accelerators in the world that charge money and do a good job and are just trying to gouge you. So like I would just steer clear of that. So go for an accelerator that has a good, credible brand and understands what you're trying to do, and then reach out to people who've done that accelerator before and ask them what the experience is like. But doing an accelerator will forever benefit your business and you individually for this business and every business you do moving forward. And then once you do an accelerator, you'll have had some cash and you'll have an insane network, because they'll plug you into a network that will make raising from an angel a whole lot easier. Because then, like Gordon said, it's a combination. Accelerator won't give you all the cash you need. You will need more money, but the accelerator sets you up to better raise from angels in the future.
Thank you. I can't disagree with anything on the accelerator part, so I won't add. I'll just plus one on all of that. On the crowdfunding, the one nuance that I want your listeners to understand is there's different types of crowdfunding. The one that you addressed, and part of the reason you took this off the table, was the category of crowdfunding that started first was pre-selling your product, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and absolutely, that's much better for consumerish type of physical products, because you can see it, you can understand it, it looks really interesting. Hey, I want one. Well, I want one. That's not going to work for enterprise software, right? But there are other types of crowdfunding that are really just more platforms to publish a traditional, let's say, angelish round of funding. But it is extremely difficult. You're exactly right. It's a huge marketing effort. There needs to be money and effort and planning. And the founder, if they choose to go to that type of crowdfunding portal, should talk to other founders that have had success and have some advisors or someone that can navigate them through the process. I still see a lot of failure with that. So I just wanted to differentiate two types of crowdfunding. And then maybe one other comment would be where you made a great point about this founder thinking that money's going to solve all their problems. That founder is also probably focused on building a product, not building a company. And investors don't invest in products, they invest in future companies. And so the other reason why I want to accentuate your advice on making sure that this founder or this type of startup surrounds themselves with help, whether it's accelerators or a really good advisory board, is to help them build the company. There's a lot more to a company than just the product. The product is important, but you have to have a company to get to a 1 million, 10 million, 100 million in revenue.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And I actually think that it's easy for founders, especially like founders that think in a product lens, to focus purely on the product. And that's exciting and it is important. But at the end of the day, your product is not your company. And your product needs to serve business objectives. And if it doesn't, you've got a shitty product. because your product can't exist unless you can sell it or you can add the value in any of the ways that you're trying to add value to these users. So that's a good point. It sounds like maybe you've got it nailed. You probably don't, but it sounds like maybe you have it nailed in the product space and you don't need any advice there, but you still need advice on the other areas of the business because, you've said questions like, oh, this sounds like you need like legal help and I don't know that kind of stuff. It's like, well, surround yourself with investors or advisors or mentors that understand the legal side. So yeah, definitely always surround yourself with people. I'm a huge supporter of mentoring, coaching, advising, peer groups. Like I love to constantly have myself surrounded. And that's the whole reason I even do this podcast. It allows me to meet incredible people in this space to constantly learn. So I would definitely recommend that. So I'll take that, Gordon. I'll try and close this one out here. So is it worth doing angel? Is it fanatical lunatic? I'm talking to you. Is it angel, VC, crowdfunding, or accelerator? Really, for me, it comes down to accelerator. So they're all potential options for different points of time for different businesses. But when you're really early, I think the best possible path for you to take is an accelerator, especially when you're kind of like a solo founder and you don't have a bunch of different, experience and insights contributing to the future of your company. So if you do an accelerator and you can get into a quality accelerator that you trust and you've met people that have had good experiences going through it, it will forever benefit your business. You will learn more in that 3 months or 6 months than probably the rest of your career to date. And it will you would jump curves. You would jump to a completely new curve, to a completely new phase of your business if you do an accelerator. And once you do that, you will actually be way better set up to raise from angels or VCs or crowdfunding, because you will have a better company and a better business and a better product by being surrounded with, a little bit of cash and a lot of advice. Anything to miss there, Gordon?
I think we helped this founder quite a bit.
All right, fanatical lunatic, you have been advised. Go join an accelerator. And if you're in Texas, go join Capital Factory. All right, we got time for one more question. I don't know if I'm going to have great advice on this one. I'm just genuinely interested in your advice on this one, Gordon. So, this challenge is called, no matter how many hours I work, it never feels like enough. Early stage, pre-seed company with 2 founders, CEO and CTO. Currently going through Techstars. I feel like we work non-stop, but there isn't enough hours in the day. I don't know if it's in my head that I just want everything to happen at the same time, but there's so much to do and a lot of it is so time consuming. I'm not sure if this is normal or healthy. I'm feeling a bit insecure about my ability and looking for some advice. How do I deal with this? From Infinite Comfort 2792, which is kind of like a ironic name because he's saying that he's insecure, but his name is Infinite Comfort.
Well, it might not be healthy, but it is normal. I tell a lot of founders who think that just getting to $1 million in revenue, their life is going to be so much easier. They might even tell me something like, God, Gordon, I'm working my ass off. I'm working 90 hours a week. I can't wait till we're at $1 million in revenue. Things are going to be so much easier. And let's just fast forward. Let's say that I then meet that same founder a year or 3 years later when they are at 1 million in revenue. I can predict what they're going to say is, God, Gordon, I'm still working 80 or 90 hours a week, but you know what? It's going to be so much easier once we get to 10 million in revenue, right? So there's this perception that it's going to get easy or easier. Well, unfortunately, it remains excruciatingly difficult and with a lot of hard work, but in different ways over time. So I tell the founder, look, it's going to be crazy hard. You're going to work your ass off. But as long as the things that are keeping you awake at night over time are changing, that's actually one proxy for understanding that your business is progressing. Now, I'm not going to suggest that after 5 years the founder needs to keep working 90 hours a week. There's a limit to how long you can really run on the hamster wheel. That is true, and that probably will change as the company grows a little bit more. But I'm sorry, in the earliest days, and I don't even know where to draw the line on that, but it's a while. You're just working your ass off. And it is also true that driven founders, they're excited about their vision. They're excited about solving a problem that needs to be solved. And so I respect the founder that is anxious to do more. Like, God, I just want to compress time. I just want to get 1 year of stuff done in 6 months, right? To me, that's excitement, that's drive, and I respect that. I reward that. But there are just so many things that time can't really be compressed. There's certain things that have to wait for other things to come together. But again, my advice would be, as long as the things that are keeping you awake at night are evolving, are changing over time, you likely are making good progress.
Yeah. It's kind of reassuring to hear, Gordon, because I feel like I still suffer from the same problem and always have, I agree as well. Like this is so normal. Like for me and for all of my friends that are also founders, like it always feels like there's not enough time and they're always suffering from imposter syndrome. I feel like my imposter syndrome is like a cycle. And I'd love to know if you see any patterns in this going elsewhere, because I just don't know. But like I always feel like, I'm doing a job and I'm like shitty at it when I begin it because it's a new job, because it's a new challenge in my business as my business grows. But then over time, like I get good advisors and I do it more and I start to get better and better and I get good. And then eventually like I'm really good at that job. And I'm like, I feel good at my job for now. And then 2 weeks later, I dive into the next level of depth, into the next challenge, and I just feel awful at my job again. I'm like, oh God, I'm not good at this. Am I the right person for this? And like, then, you learn and you learn and you learn, you get to that next new challenge. But like, I feel like that insecurity of like learning something new is what drives me to feel like there's not enough time and to do the crazy hours and to push, because it always feels like, am I good enough? Am I the right person to take this forward? Like what needs to be done here?
I present to a lot of audiences all the time. I stand in front of very large groups, small groups, big Fortune 500 CEOs, etc. But even though I've done that a lot of times, if I'm going to stand on stage for a very large audience and it's a very important event or whatever, I still get butterflies in my stomach. But I know that's going to happen because it's happened to me a million times. And I also have learned that after about 20 seconds or 30 seconds, certainly within a minute, they're going to go away because I'm going to be in my groove. So it's something that I've learned, and I'm now going to translate it back to this particular issue. You're kind of like me, which is once I feel like I've semi-mastered something, I start losing interest, and I need to hit the reset button to go feed the learner in me. Learner is my number one strength. But being a learner, and meaning you hit reset buttons to go do something new so that you can learn, means now you're faking it each time, and you've got imposter syndrome each time you hit that reset button. Much like me being on stage, I also learned that after hitting the reset button, I'm going to have this imposter syndrome feeling, but at the same time, the learner in me is being fed. So I'm being rewarded at the same time I'm kind of freaking out. And so it took me a few of those iterations, just 3 or 4 or 5, for me to realize, you know what? One of my big strengths is a survival strength. It's hitting the eject button, jumping into an unfamiliar field, and adapting and adjusting and surviving and learning. That's something that I'm actually good at. It's going to feel really freaky for a while, but just like after being on stage for a minute and I start to kind of hit my groove, that's going to happen with this other thing. The mental metaphor that I actually developed for myself is to just run through the fire, because I had a fear factor. Actually, I did have fear. Was an important emotion, an important personality trait for me. I learned to overcome the fear, hit the eject button, and I'd say, just run through the fire, because when you get on the other side of the fire line, your survival instincts are going to kick in and you're going to have a lot of damn fun. So not all founders are wired the way that you and I are in this particular similarity, but I'm hoping that story, or hoping that analogy will help some other founders understand that it's going to feel that way. You will eventually get comfortable with it, and then you might find that you decide to go do it all over again, and that's okay.
I love that analogy, and I'm definitely going to take that myself, of running through the fire, because it also seems really cool to run through a fire. Like, it probably wouldn't be, but it seems cool when I think about it. And maybe just the last thing I'll say on this is, even though, like, I fall victim to this too, and I want to just work like tons of hours, I think there is a limit of successful and valid returns here. So I think the most important thing here to do is to make sure that you always look after and build the right habits in your life. So you need to find out what they are for you. Like for me, it's like some meditation and journaling and exercise and good food and like some breaks on the weekends and time with my wife. Like whatever your habits are, when you get them right and you're not just burning yourself out all the time and you look after yourself, you do better thinking. So like, especially as a founder, like your job mainly is to just make decisions, and the better the quality of your decisions, the better the chance of success are in your business. So yes, you're going to have to do big hours, but don't do big hours just for the sake of big hours. Like make sure you're still setting yourself up for success, and that might look different for every person, but whether it's the food or the time or whatever, do the things in your life and build that foundation so that you are bringing quality, bringing the best version of yourself to work. And maybe you can sustain 12-hour days, or maybe it's that you can sustain 10-hour days or whatever it is. So I think you need to do the work as well. Like working on yourself is really important in a startup.
I think, with some conscious effort and a little bit of luck, these founders will end up surrounding themselves with a team that they can really trust and respect, and they will evolve a culture of the company that is healthy for the company. And at that moment, that founder that's working the 12-hour days will be able to disappear for a day or two, or maybe even a week, to get that battery recharge, to and not freak out. They'll know that, hey, you know what? The company's going to be okay. It takes a little while to reach that point, but you're exactly right. You cannot run on the hamster wheel 70 to 90 hours a week for 5 years straight. You will just break in half and really bad things will happen. So build a great team that you trust and respect. Evolve a culture that you know is healthy for the company so that increasingly and at increasing frequencies, you can disappear and get that battery recharge.
Yeah. All right, well, let's close this one out here because I feel like that we've given some very good advice. When I say we, I mean Gordon has given some very good advice. So infinite comfort. You're in a very normal position. You know, founders, and particularly ambitious founders, they want to do more in less time. And so they just want to work more and more and more and more and more and push themselves to the absolute breaking point. And almost every founder does that. So you're in a position that is normal, but probably not healthy. So you do need to be very conscious of that. So make sure you look after yourself, make sure you build the right kind of systems in your life to set yourself up well for work. Because if you keep running on that hamster wheel for 90 hours a week, for too long, you will break. And not coming to work because you're burnt out is way less effective than taking a 5-hour break one day. So just think about that a little bit more. And then also, you know, that insecurity in your work, that's also really normal too. And Gordon had a really great analogy for this one, is that like recognize the patterns in your life. Whether it's that you get butterflies when you public speak or it's that every time you get good at something, you get bored and you start something new, recognize those patterns and see that you are good at this and you can do a great job. And then know that. And for Gordon, that's called walking through the fire. So find what it is for you about what it is walking through that fire. And remember that when you are going through those hard times, because you've done this before. Anything missing there, Gordon?
I think it's fabulous. I'm glad we were able to help that founder because there are many others just like that one.
Yeah. All right. Infinite comfort. You've been advised. And that's it. That's all the time we got for questions. And we'll move on to the last section of the show, which is plugs. So tell us, Gordon, what's going on in your life? What do you want to plug right now?
You know, I am at a point in my life now where I'm not running on the hamster wheel, and I do have time to collect the things that are in my head and the stories that I've experienced and the successes and failures, and capture them in ways that hopefully can benefit others. You know, I've published just about everything I can think of, and I keep publishing on a website called Shockwave Innovations. It's shockwaveinnovations.com. About 160 articles and growing. I've got free online courses. I've got downloadable resources. And it gives me great pleasure when I bump into a founder at a meetup or somewhere, and I don't know them, but they know me because they found an article I wrote and it really helped them. My book is referenced there. I might write more books. So I guess I would plug the content that I've produced that I've heard from others is at least pretty helpful, sometimes very, very helpful, and would enjoy others getting benefit from it.
Okay, I think as everyone can probably hear, Gordon, you think in a very, I guess, an interesting way. Like you think through the questions really well and answer them from a place of experience. So definitely check those articles out. I love the articles. You know, I read a bunch of them before bringing Gordon on to make sure I was picking questions that I thought he would enjoy answering. But like, there is some really good stuff on there. So, and like, there's 160 articles. So if you've got a problem, he's probably written an entire article about it or create a free course about it. So it's definitely worth checking out. I'll put those links in. Also, if you're in Austin, go to the Capital Factory, which is Gordon's brainchild, and it's definitely, you know, this incredible co-working space and venture fund and accelerator that really is that does bring incredible events, incredible people together every single week. So it's worth checking out the Capital Factory if you're in Texas, really, because there's a few hubs now. All right, and then on my side, as always, I selfishly plug myself. So get out your phone right now and subscribe to the podcast. Now, my preference is YouTube. That's my top preference. So pull out YouTube, press subscribe. And then, as always, steal a phone. I completely condone stealing phones as long as you're going to subscribe on the stolen phone and then give it back because they'll enjoy the new apps that you found for them. And then also comment on the videos. I think commenting is good for the algorithm, but I'm not sure. So just give it a go. Just write nice things in the comments. And look, thank you to everyone who writes in. We love these questions. So if you've got problems that you want us to answer, send them through to podcast@joelditrapani.com. And lastly, I've got a booking link. So if you want to catch up, you want to ask me questions, you just want to chat, get to meet me. I love meeting new people. I love talking about product and startups. Let's have a conversation. So there's a booking link. Book some time at my Cal. And that's it. We're going to bring this one. We're going to wrap this one up. So, Gordon, man, thank you so much for coming on. Your advice was really fun, and I loved hearing more about kind of your experience and what led you to writing the book as well. This has been a really fun conversation.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
All right, this has been another episode of the Do As I Say podcast. We'll see you all next week.